Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Zach, live from our nation's capital. Today we're discussing how to spend money, color matching in the virtual and real worlds, the new Series 3 Leko from ETC, the virtues and pitfalls of owning equipment, and I can't keep up, all on Light Talk.
And this is David, coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. If you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers. Woo! Yeah, Lumen Brothers, three of us. And welcome everyone to episode 213. And right off the top, we want to welcome our dear friend and bass and guitar player for the Lumenoids, Zak Borovay. Welcome back, Zak.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, the question that has been pouring in from around the world, Nepal,
Especially Nepal.
Korea, South Africa, Georgia, what is your bass guitar of preference?
Oh, boy. Well, I have a modest but fun collection of bass guitars, but my bass guitar of preference is a 1986 Paul Reed Smith Bass 4, which I actually got with my Bar Mitzvah money.
The Bar Mitzvah money comes through.
Yes.
So was that just a bad year for bass guitars or a good year for Bar Mitzvah?
It was an interesting year for both.
Well, you know, the Paul Reed Smiths are my favorite guitars in the world. They're beautiful, beautiful guitars. A lot, most of them are handmade.
Yes.
So, and if you ever go to NAMM, go to the Paul Reed Smith booth.
Yes,
absolutely. It's always upstairs. They display all their guitars. It is just really beautiful.
Yes,
really beautiful.
When we moved to Maryland, my bass had a mini reunion with its maker. We drove out there. He's near Annapolis, and we brought it to the factory for a little visit.
Wow. Well, it's great to have you on the show again, Zak. A couple of things. First of all, how's your shoulder? You just had shoulder surgery.
I did. My goal is to get in shape in time for LDI so we can play,
That's right. We're
there
going to
you
have
go. There you go.
Special Lumenoids Unplugged Concert.
I'm bringing my washboard and my spoons.
Excellent.
Or my bagpipes.
And we got the cowbell for Stan, so, we're all set.
Perfect.
And it's funny because you were ringing in our ears last week because we had your buddy Bob on the show last week.
Bob, my partner at Mode Studios.
We were doing 2 Mode weeks in a row, really.
Yeah. He's our fearless creative director,
That's right. Well, that was a great interview.
Absolutely.
We really enjoyed it. But we had a couple of great ones. We had Paul first, right?
Yeah, that was wonderful.
And then we did Bob. And then today we're just doing a regular show, but that's great. It's good to get back into that. And then next week we have Driscoll back with us. And 2 weeks from today, we have 2 guests coming in. Steve, do you know who they are?
I have no idea. I'm thinking about my question right now, just getting ready to have that.
Oh, you're just getting ready for the question.
I just want that perfect answer.
In 2 weeks, we have Mark Stanley and Clifton Taylor returning to Light Talk to tell us about a special program that they've designed. So that's going to be really, really cool.
That's very exciting.
Tune in. It is very exciting. Yeah. So I want to know a lot more about it. Anyway, so let's get started. Steve has our first question.
Okay, it is Timothy in Ohio. And Timothy writes, as we wind down the school year, I have production money left over. What do you think of dance towers versus booms? So you're expanding your inventory a little bit. I will tell you right now, as lights get bigger and heavier and bulkier, I am leaning toward dance towers. I've had a few booms go up in the last couple of years that kind of lean at the top, no matter how much cable is stuck on them. It's just hard to put a big old LED Leko out there. So I'm a big tower guy. And, what I use is I use a 20-foot tower, and comes in 2 10-foot sections. I load up the bottom, stand that sucker up, and then I just use a chain motor to lift the 10-foot top section into place and bolt it all together. But the thing that I do on my dance towers is they're wide enough so that they can accommodate 2 lights side by side. So I can really get that kicker right down there at the floor, and I can load that thing up. I got the idea from Dallas Opera. They have a great boom. And because they're doing things in rep, they load that thing up with 2 sets of lights. So rep 1 is, I don't know, the downstage vertical, and show in rep 2 is the upstage vertical. They can even spin it if they wanted to and have a third light in there. So it's just a monster. But I love that. Put it on some casters. It looks a little scary, but it doesn't move.
Well, in Europe, these types of booms are on casters, and there's usually a ladder going up the back of it. And they're very easily moved, for scene shifts and things like that. So that's kind of normal, and it's wide enough for 2. But my question is, and maybe we're going to talk about this later, and let's talk about, is why are these lights getting bigger and heavier? It's supposed to be going the other way. I just don't understand it. What do you think, Zach? Do you like dance towers or regular booms?
The idea of the dance tower is actually very interesting to me. I think a similar experience to Steve, the Dallas Opera tech is really what kind of sold me on that. But I also kind of feel the same way you do in that things seem to get bigger and take up more space. And it seems like that's the kind of thing where, we'd want some kind of magical, smaller device that doesn't even require some giant piece of truss or anything like that. But I will say, just to add to your comment, that in my experience in Europe, the chain motor is also used to move actors.
Well, we use rakes. We gently push them downstage, and they eventually roll into the pit.
Yes.
So, that's great. One thing we'll get to talk again later about the new Series 3 is that the lens barrels on the new Series 3s are even thicker and wider than the older ones. So they're getting bigger too. They're getting larger.
So I apologize in advance if I mispronounce this name, but Thick in Vietnam asks, Zach, I am a student honing my skills as a projection designer, and I am stuck. How do you suggest I approach color matching between the virtual and real world? This is an excellent question, which is something that I have dealt with in my entire career. And it's funny because I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show before, but I come from a line of people who worked in theater and film, going back to my grandfather, who actually worked, he owned a film developing lab just as color film became a consumer product in the 50s and 60s. And back then, it was a lot about the quality of the eye of the person who was doing the processing. And so it would be someone like my grandfather who was deciding what the quality of the red was going to be for Richard Avedon or something like that. What is the quality of this color going to be, and how do I relate to that? And now the big challenge that we face in the live entertainment world is we have all these different devices that mix colors in a different way. So I have a computer that treats color a certain way, and I'm trying to match it to a light that treats color a totally different way. So you guys know, I'm sure, when you mix colors with light, it doesn't affect the quality of the color in the same way as when you do in a computer or with paint or something like that. And so for many years, I was often chasing the color of gel. And, Driscoll, who used to assist me many years ago, who you had on the show a few weeks ago, he and I figured out a way to sort of extract the colors out of Lightright so that we could make a simulation of them in Photoshop to apply virtual gel to our imagery.
Cool.
And but it was still a contest. And I think you've had Chad from Roscoe on the show as well. And Chad and I used to talk a lot about what kind of gel can I put in front of the lens of the projector, because I'm using a projector that has a kind of lamp or multiple lamps that produces a different quality of light than any kind of lighting fixture does. But if I use the same gel, if I have same blue gel in front of my projector that you have in front of your light, then at least I can get into your world a lot closer. So we always joked that I wanted him to develop this Borovay yellow color.
Borovay yellow.
Yeah,
that I got to see.
And that was sort of born out of this idea, working with, especially with a lot of British lighting designers, where they do a lot of things with this a million shades of white. That I did a show where we had all black and white projections, but when you're doing a live theater, the audience perception of what is white, what is black, what is blue is whatever you tell them it is. If you have an all white set and you create like a blue state, you can say this is our blackout. And people will just sort of accept this is the language of that. That being said, as we move now into these virtual things with extended reality stuff, where you have a combination of a computer with a virtual lighting fixture, and then you might have an actual lighting fixture like an LED lighting fixture or something else, the goal or the hope is that at some point we'll develop some kind of universal tool for measuring the quality of color, so we can all just say, okay, everybody, dial in 76354, and we'll all go to the same color. Sort of like Pantone, but even a step further. So I hope that we're going that way. For now, I think it's a lot of trial and error. The magic of the post-production is that you can make anything all one color very easily. You can match things later in the computer. I mean, when you watch these videos about like The Mandalorian, that TV show, which is shot in extended reality, what you see on the screen in post-production, it's amazing how manipulated every little aspect of it is compared to what they shoot. And that the tools have gotten so fast that we're doing 75, 80, 90% of that in real time. And then they're just sort of, final polish at the end. So a lot of it is just sort of use your eye, talk to each other, do your best, and try to prepare in advance. Talk to your lighting people and find out what colors they're going to bring to the table. And then start with something as close as you can.
That's really good advice, because I actually wanted to ask Bob this question, but since you're really Bob's partner, you can answer it.
Sure.
Because, when you're going into a show and you're integrating XR with real, with live, and you're dealing with projections and things like that as well. How do you wrap around the color in your mind that it all unifies? Now, we talked about this when we were talking about the Grammy show, because there's a lot of that was sort of done in projections and XR and stuff like that. Do you approach it differently when you're mixing XR with live?
I think somewhat. I mean, I think that, like as I said, the more preparation is definitely your friend here, because you want to kind of go in there knowing what you think in advance might be the trouble spots, so that you can start by working on that. Start by looking at the things that you think aren't going to match. Start by thinking about, like, where's the edge of this thing? And let's focus for a minute on the edge, so we can make sure that the real and the virtual blend in that spot. And then we can, start with that zoomed in idea and then back up and back up and back up. Sort of like the way you might do if you were retouching an image, like a photograph, where you'd start with what's the problem area, and then how do I blend it in around that, and blend it in beyond that, and blend it in beyond that, until I've created this big picture. But it's sort of like getting to the point where where the problem spots might be in advance is how you prepare for that, I think.
That's interesting. And who has the final say when you're doing the final mix?
The director.
Yeah. So the director's there with the lighting director and whoever's doing the XR, right? And basically is finally saying, no, this isn't working. The lighting needs to be a little warmer, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. It's fascinating to me. I mean, to me, that's
and if you really want to do a deep dive, you can look into like the technology they used for that Jon Favreau Lion King remake from a few years ago.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, the whole world was created in 3D models, and then they were able to use virtual cameras and move them around as if they were physical objects to get the angles they want and to get the camera shots they want. Because part of this too is, we as an audience still, in order to believe it, we need to see certain things that we're familiar with, whether it's a camera angle or whether it's the quality of light in a certain way. And so finding these tools that can blend those things to sort of push the envelope, but also give us enough that we buy into it, are really, that's the trick to making it all work.
That's really cool. Steve, do you have anything? Do you want to add to this?
No, I'm feverishly taking notes because this is like a master class.
It is. That's why we're talking about it.
We should charge for this episode.
I forgot to ask Bob this last week, and I wanted to ask an expert, so we just did. So that's great.
Keep in mind the way the technology moves, that by Saturday when this comes out, it may be all different by then.
That's really funny. Daniel in Virginia writes, you have spoken about working over rehearsals. How much do you have in the console before you start, and how much do you really have planned out prior to working over the rehearsal? Everything is moving too fast for me, and I can't keep up. I'm falling and I can't get up. Well, okay, I'm going to tell you the truth here. As you know, if you're a regular listener to the show, I treat lighting like I treat music, and I sort of like treat the whole process very similar to the way I treat playing in a band. And like when you learn a song, you learn the song, you know what the arrangement's going to be. You usually know what key it's going to be in. And then when you play it live, you listen to each other, and all that can change. Even though you're playing the arrangement, what happens between the bars could be all improvisational. It's jazz, and that's how jazz players play. And when I approach a show, I pretty much know the color of the atmospheres are going to be, what the shapes of the atmospheres are going to be. I have a good idea what the transitions are. I know where the cues are probably going to be. But like music, that could change depending on what's happening around you, because theater is very, very fluid, especially this part of the process when you're into theater. So that's pretty much what I do. I don't put anything in the board because I'm not a programmer, and I have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to be using, and I have a pretty good idea of where the focus is going to be. So that's the best way I can answer it. How about you guys?
Well, I could tell you a quick story. One of my earliest jobs on Broadway was assisting and programming for Wendell Harrington on the musical Grey Gardens. And we were hired specifically to create an animation moment that was the end of Act 1. And by the time the show opened, that had been cut, and we had created projections for almost the entire rest of the show. So as much as we prepared, yeah. But I think the secret to all of this is, even though I jokingly said I can't keep up, is to keep a cool head. Yeah. And you don't have to, I don't want to say you should accept that you can't keep up, because sort of using the playing in a band metaphor, like as long as you know where the downbeat is, you're going to be okay. So it's okay to have to change the plan. So not getting frustrated or flummoxed or coming to a standstill if you have to turn on a dime is the secret, I found, to being able to do this, because you're going to reinvent the show at least 3 times during tech anyway. So just go into it knowing that's going to happen.
That's what makes it fun. And there's, continuing with the band metaphor, that it's also really important to know how to start the song and end a song. If you know that, and you know what key it is, and you have an idea what the arrangement is, you're fine. So have fun.
Right.
Well, I agree. I mean, it is about turning on a dime. It is about having 7 ideas when you come into that tech. It's about having a plan on where you're heading. And if you're heading in the wrong direction and it's just ugly, then you need to turn and do something else. You also need to have the courage to kind of turn to the director and say, I'm working over the rehearsal. We agreed that I should do this. I just need a second to catch up. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, sure, just don't black out the stage. Let's get caught up. Let me know when you're caught up. They may be pushing on in more blocking or more conversation on stage. But I prefer working live. And it is so much easier. You don't always have that opportunity. I've gone into places where it really kind of has to be in the console when I get there. But if I can work with the director and the actors in the space, I always think it's a better experience for everyone.
Well, it's like what Paul says. I mean, get the broad strokes done. Get those big broad strokes recorded. All the stuff, the little focus cues and the little dynamics that may change during the scene, you can put those in later. You can add them in over rehearsals, but just get those broad strokes done and get something in the board. You don't want to get through that first rehearsal with only like 2 scenes out of 8 scenes done. And they continued. They got through 8 scenes, but you got so lost that you're still trying to fix other stuff. Push forward. You'll get that other stuff done later. I found that directors don't like to be told, I got to wait. You got to hold on a second for the most part. I must just tell you that they get very nervous at that point. And you just say, okay, I'll fix that later. And that's okay. You can say, I'll fix that later and move on. And I always do that. I have a cue list that I pre-write. And when I record a cue, I highlight that my cue list in yellow. If I need to come back and work on it, I put it in blue. And I do this, and maybe in one scene there may be 8 cues, but maybe only one of them I wrote. And the other ones are in green, because I know that they're minor things I can come back, so that when I come back and I actually record these other cues, I change those to yellow. So I know exactly what's done and what's not done. And if I cut a cue, it's in red, but I always keep the cue there so I know what I cut, and make sure that the stage manager knows also. So organization is a big part of it as well. But don't freak out that you're falling behind, because you're really not. You're actually working over the show and you're getting ideas. And usually when you go home that night, you'll say, oh, now I know what to do in that scene.
You know, when I was young and naive and just starting in opera, a conductor hired me. And he hired me because of my improvisational work. And he said, what we need is, I want you to be a partner in this. No, I was young and stupid. He said, I want you to be a partner. So at the piano tech, you just let me know. Here, we're going to give you a light switch, and whenever you want me to stop, flip the switch, and the light will go off. And so I thought, this is great. So, we start, and I'm chugging along there, and I flip the switch, and he stops. He stops the piano tech, and he turns around. He says, Steve, this is exactly why you're here. This is exactly why
I've never heard a conductor do this. That's crazy.
Thank you so much. This is how we're going to get it right. Uh-huh. And I said, thanks. And then he turned around, and there was the downbeat immediately.
Of course.
So he started playing again. So I realized that there was no point in flipping that switch ever again.
Just continue.
He was going to continue no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, you guys definitely, I will say, in the projections world, I've always been jealous in that for a lighting designer, as long as you don't go to a blackout in the middle of rehearsing a song, right. You can kind of get away with, I'm working. But like if I bring up an image that's the wrong image, everybody looks at your image and they can't just go, oh, he's working on that other song right now.
They'll yell, that's the wrong image.
Yes. I can't rehearse this with that up there.
Why is there a 30-foot cockroach up on the screen?
Exactly.
That's for Act 4.
Right.
I saw Hal Binkley working on a dance at the Joyce one evening. And, it's tech. He's kind of working over dance. And he probably created the world's ugliest light cue. I mean, it was like a Pepto-Bismol psych. And he just stood up at the tech table and turned around to everybody and said, I'm really sorry. I'll never do that again. And just went back to work.
That's good.
Now that you're kind of a pseudo Lumen brother, maybe your stock is going up and you can just turn and stop these rehearsals.
Yeah, I'm going to get my own light switch.
Wait, it's like he's not a pseudo Lumen brother. He is a Lumen brother. Pseudo, no. No. You are the Lumen brother.
I'm not questioning his ability to play a bass guitar.
No, you're not. But you said pseudo Lumen brother. He is a Lumen brother. We're all Lumen brothers.
Sounds good.
It's like a Disney production.
We're all Lumen brothers.
Yes, it's a Lumen after all. You are listening to Light Talk, and today's episode is sponsored by
a public service announcement from No More 10 out of 12s. A group of rowdy beavers is being blamed for causing a town in British Columbia to lose its internet, phone, and cable TV service this past weekend by chewing through the fibers and using them to build their little houses. The beaver menace could move across our northern border. If the Canadian beaver can chew through an internet line, what chance do our American DMX lines have against the mighty beaver? Now, there are those among you who may reject the Beaver Threat. To you, I ask, why is ETC working so hard to develop a stable wireless DMX system on their new fixtures? Is this simple coincidence? I think not. If you travel through Wisconsin, you're apt to see beavers all over the place. And many of those beavers are rowdy Canadian beavers that have crossed our border. What to do? That is why Bad Hombre Stage Productions has stepped up with a brand new product, Beaver Go Home. 1 part coyote urine, 1 part coffee, and 1 part Raid. This handy aerosol can be sprayed on your DMX lines and keep those beavers at bay. This has been a public service announcement from No More 10 out of 12s.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sound of those crazy rabid ducks tell us that it's time again for Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About is all about the new Series 3 Leco and Desire Fresnel from ETC. Now, several weeks ago, we actually did a Let's Talk about game changing and if this was indeed going to be a game changer. And a lot of it was, it sounds great. We have all the confidence in the world in ETC, and it's probably going to change everything. But we need to see it. Well, the good people at ETC invited me over to their Los Angeles showroom, and I got a complete demo on these fixtures. Not on the Desire Fresnel, but on the previous Fresnel that also uses the same type of light engine. And I must tell you that I am very impressed. Very, very impressed. I think they've got it. Not only does the light engine perform beautifully when it comes to color matching the 3200K, but it also has an amazing menu system on the back of it where you can really dial in the colors. It has new side tilt clamps, which actually extend and are very useful. And I was just very impressed with the way it's designed. Plus, as we all know, it has that new inboard multiverse control system. So you don't have DMX cables everywhere. It has a little antenna on the back, too. Have you guys seen these guys up close yet?
I have not. I'm being promised to have one, to see one soon. Now, you stuck your hand out and turned your hand all red. What did you think of that?
I was just showing that was only that deep red LED on. That's why I posted
so that. So you think that really makes the difference?
Absolutely. Because we A/B'd it against the old Series 2s, and it was a dramatic difference. It was a dramatic difference in color rendition, and it was also a dramatic difference in power. I think it's 40% brighter than the previous Series 2.
Wow.
Well, I'm looking at their spec sheet here, and it says 13,000 lumens, right, which that's pretty bright.
Yeah, it's almost as bright as the old 750-watt Source 4. Not exactly as bright, but almost as bright. Again, it depends on what color you're using, too. I'm just talking about when you got it dialed into 3200. If you're using, if you put a primary red in front of a 750-watt Source 4, and then you dial in the primary red of that ETC Series 3, I believe that the Series 3 will outperform it when it comes to those colors.
Did you see it with the new lens against an older lens? Since it'll take any lens you want to stick in there.
It will take the older lenses, but here's the thing. The new lenses are actually wider. They're actually larger, not longer, but wider, fatter. And they're fatter by, I believe, about a half inch to an inch. I'm not too sure, but it's significant. Now, it will take an old lens tube, but depending on what LEDs are used for, whatever specific color you're using, some of those LED light emitters will be hitting the inside of the tube and not going out the front. And we were looking at the color, and it was about almost an inch worth. So we'll cut off some intensity depending on the color. And that's a problem. But in order to get that full array of LEDs in there, they had to go to a wider tube.
Well, I do want to say, in terms of that kind of stuff, the thing that really amazes me, which is something that I deal with all the time since the world of projections are so much about transitions, is how much time and effort and care and thoughtfulness that these manufacturers put into the quality of the shift in color temperature as the light fades in and out, and how they try to simulate, the quality of that natural light in an LED. And I'm always curious to see when a new fixture like this comes out, because I think a lot of times, like a Verilight has a simulation mode, and then there's just like a straight on and off mode, like a Tesla almost kind of thing.
Right. Well, they did show me the transition, the simulated transition of going from 3200 Kelvin to like 1500 Kelvin. And it was beautiful. It really was. But I didn't see like the simulation going from like a lavender to a Borovay yellow. I haven't seen that one.
I don't know if anyone's seen that yet.
But I want to see this Borovay yellow, okay? That's really what I'm interested in. But you're right, absolutely. But I have a feeling they have that stuff together. They've been doing it for a while.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about before, like this idea that everything can talk to everything else, and now that we're all really using pure digital tools, it should be much easier to develop some kind of language to have everything communicate and match the quality and color temperature to everything else.
So what do you guys think? When is the tungsten lamp going away? When are all of these, millions of Source 4s just going to have to be retired?
Well, when it gets cheap enough, now this fixture is not inexpensive.
So you don't think we're going to follow the way Europe has and Australia has and just said, like next Wednesday, that's it?
No, because our politicians are paid off by all these companies and they're not going to just make a rule like that. And then you have nuts like those people in Congress who think that it's infringing upon our liberties to create a rule, It's infringing upon my liberty to wear a mask.
Is there an amendment about tungsten lights?
I haven't seen it yet.
2.5.
We need the Alamo flag that says "Come and take it," except it has an incandescent
but at
bulb on it.
the same time, yeah. I mean, you have like millions of wonderful regional and community theaters. Are you just going to tell them one day you need to go spend $1 million on new lights?
Yeah, exactly. No. Well, if there was a way that the government can subsidize it, why not? That'd be great.
Sure.
And then ETC would be building like 5 different plants making thousands of these lights. So,
right.
Well, I mean, there is going to be a point. I don't even think it's the American government. There's going to be a point that the lamp manufacturer is going to say, it's just not worth our time anymore.
Right.
Right. Well, I think that's also something that I've talked about with our friends at Roscoe. Like, are we ever going to get to the end of gel? And then what do we do?
Right.
Gel is not the most environmentally friendly product.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
So, just a couple of interesting notes. It is very front heavy, especially with this new lens train. We actually put a 10 degree in, the new 10 degree lens barrel in there. And that sucker was front heavy. Now, the tilt clamps do hold it. But again, these lights are getting huge. It's like that new Martin fixture. That new Martin Leco is really big and heavy. So I'm just pretty amazed that, why everything's getting so big again and so heavy again.
Well, it's always been, I think, big and heavy in Europe.
Yeah.
They've never been obsessed with small size the way we have.
Right. Well, that's because they have socialized medicine.
That's true. For your
so
hernia.
if you hurt your back, you go to the doctor. It's free.
I got a hernia. That's all right. Just go down the corner. The hospital's at the end of the left at the clinic. Yeah, that's pretty much the way it is. But, I also saw that FOSS 4, which was that Fresnel, which has been out for a while, but it's using the same light engine. And that is a fantastic light. I was you always hear me on the show saying that Fresnels are dead. I'm telling you, that FOSS 4 is a nice Fresnel. It's got like a 13 to 55 degree zoom, but it's pretty expensive. We'll see. I think once Martin comes out and then Strand comes out and they start competing, obviously it's going to bring things down. So
okay, new sidebar here. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing all this problem around the world with microchips right now. So what do you think that's going to do to Verilight and Claypaky and ETC and Martin? Because they certainly do not have, their combined buying power is not going to even come close to equaling Honda or General Motors. So all of a sudden, I think they may be in trouble because if I'm a semiconductor factory, I'm going to be selling billions of dollars worth of semiconductors to General Motors, not millions of dollars to a few lighting companies. This may slow things down too.
Yeah, it may. I think things are going to be picking up a little slower, to tell you the truth, for a number of reasons.
Yeah. Well, although I wonder if Martin, because they're a subsidiary of Samsung, which is a chip manufacturer, if that might give them some kind of edge.
It might. I mean, they might.
They have more direct access.
They might take care of their own, but I'm always a little suspicious.
Right.
Who was that a few years ago that bought High End, that projector company?
Barco.
Barco.
So all of a sudden you have Barco who comes in and they're selling $1 million projection systems. Do they really want to sell, $10,000, $8,000 moving lights?
Well, it's interesting when I think about Martin in particular, because I know that Martin is the predominant manufacturer for cruise ships.
Right.
And that's a huge market, but right now that's a dead market.
I see them. There are 4 of them docked right outside my front window. I see them every day. They've been there now for a year.
Yeah. Pre-pandemic, I worked on a ship, and that company had enough sway with Martin to have them implement features into the lighting console that were not there, because they were like, we have, 30, 40 ships.
Right.
We have 1,000 of these consoles. But right now, they have no power probably because they're just in the dock.
That's right.
Well, I'm buying Disney stock as fast as I can because that is going to become a monster,
Well, Disney's really doing the right thing when it comes to that whole Marvel thing. I mean, now we're really off the subject of let's talk about. But boy, are they producing great stuff with Marvel. That's all I have to say.
That's why the crazy ducks are in charge of, let's talk about.
Well, they're in rabid right now. They're in rabid mode. Anyway, let's finish off the show. Steve has our last question of the day.
Kane in Wisconsin. Kane, watch out for those beavers. Kane in Wisconsin writes, do you own any gear? If so, what and why? I'm almost about to punt this over to Zak. What's happening is I'm doing more video and film work, and so I'm snatching up a few tungsten fixtures and a little grip equipment, so I can just make a whole little package. So you get the gear too. But typically, no, I don't own equipment. That's not something as a designer that I really want. For me, it's money wasted. I'd rather just focus on the design and not have rental packages. Though I do know a couple people actually here in Dallas who have small moving light packages, like 12, 24 lights. And when the theater hires them, they bring in their equipment with them. So they get the designer who's quite good, and that designer brings in that equipment for that one big musical or rock and roll show that they're doing, that the theater can't afford that equipment just to have an inventory, but they can bring this person in, and it's like a, one big package. I don't know. Do you guys own anything?
I think Zak and I own the same stuff. We own basically musical equipment. He owns bass guitars and amps, and I own Hammond organs and Mellotrons, and that's about it. What do you think, Zak?
It's challenging, especially in the video world, because, I said this jokingly earlier, but if I buy something today, tomorrow it's going to be old news.
That's right.
And so I do own like a green screen kit. Luckily, green screen is still green screen. It's still green. I have a camera, but I usually get a new camera every couple of years because the technology just shifts and changes enough that it's not worth it to use. I mean, it's funny because when you had Paul on and he and Driscoll talked about that show where it ended up being cheaper for Driscoll to go to Scotland to shoot stuff, and I helped Driscoll put together a camera package for that, and it was a similar thing. It was cheaper to buy it than to rent it at that point. But at the same time, you own something that in 6 months is going to be obsolete, and you're going to get hired to do a show that's 4K, and you're going to own a 1080p camera, and it's not going to be high enough resolution. So if you it's sort of like, they say if you think you're going to wear the tuxedo at least 3 times, then it's worth buying instead of renting. So you got to kind of forecast. Like when I was doing Rock of Ages and we knew that there was a scene in the show that we had to shoot against a green screen, and that we were going to shoot it like 4 times a year, probably as long as the show ran, it was worth it to own a camera at that point. Because it was going to be cheaper, and it was going to be something that was a tool I could use for other things as well. I own licenses for a bunch of media servers, and the reason that I feel like that's okay is that in many ways it's like I own a dongle, right. And then whatever computer I have is the computer that I can use to program. The media server is just software at that point. I mean, it's tricky because, especially when you work in theater, you look over at the sound department and they rent everything, like down to the mouse or down to their pencils. And we're sort of required to bring our own mouse. And I'm just like, I want to rent a mouse. I want to rent a printer.
Yeah.
But it's just, this is part of the history and tradition that we're sort of expected to have our own equipment. And I as someone who's also taught projection design at the university level, the challenge there is like, it's one thing for me to buy a license of Watch Out, which is a couple $1,000s. But if I'm going to teach a class and they need to have 20 licenses of Watch Out, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. I have a question for you, Zak.
Sure.
What do you use for a video monitor? If you're going to watch like something like the Grammys on television, what are you watching? What's your monitor?
I have a TCL television brand TV. That's a Dolby Vision TV. That's something actually I was thinking about during the color balancing thing, that now with things like Dolby Vision and HDR, which is a high density resolution imagery, that high dynamic range, there's sort of an automatic color calibration that goes on between your TV and whatever your playback device is, if it's Apple TV or Chromecast or whatever. But like in the newest version of the iPhone and Apple TV software that just came out the other day, there's actually a built-in color calibration tool where you hold your phone face forward to your TV, and the little camera in the front that you use for FaceTime like examines the pixels and measures the color temperature of the pixels and adjusts your TV accordingly based on that.
Why haven't you gone to OLED?
Because I have kids.
And they'll kill it? Is that what you're saying?
No, he has college to worry about.
Clothes, they want to go to school. They want to play soccer.
Oh, money.
Yeah.
They want food.
Yeah, OLED has not come down in price to the point yet where
it's affordable.
It's affordable enough for my home.
Okay, got it. Well,
we'll see how business comes back after the pandemic's over.
I suggest you sell those children and you buy an OLED TV.
No, I've seen them.
How old are your children?
They are 8 and 12.
See, I started out with plasma, and then I had to get OLED because everything now looks gray to me. I mean, if
I held on to my
it's
plasma
gray.
TV for a long time.
Yeah, but then it doesn't do 4K. That's the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
No, mine was 720p.
Yeah, that's great. Great television.
Yeah.
Well, the rocking sounds of the Lumenoids tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on Spotify, iTunes, Google, YouTube, livedesignonline.com, and just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for future guests, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you do decide to litigate, the law firm of Flecht, Flocht, Flare, and Glare and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Washington, D.C., and from deep in the heart of Texas.
And tune in next week when we welcome back our friend and guest host, Driscoll Otto, to Light Talk.
All that and a new sponsor.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk. Thanks, Zak.
Thank you.